So we've been having conversations about the next work environment, and there's lots of change and uncertainty, and we've expanded our conversations to include experts in a variety of disciplines, asking them to share their expertise and insights as we continue to look for more innovative solutions. Today, I'm fortunate to be here with Hans Lee. Hans is the managing director with Hines in its Office of Innovation and is leading the launch in its Flexible Workspace platform. He has been with Hines for 14 years and has 20 years of experience in commercial real estate investment, development, and operations. Hans earned his MBA from the Wharton School and his BS from Stanford University. So this is our second conversation with Hans. We had a great discussion earlier, and we felt that it was worth continuing with part two. Today, what we wanted to explore was more the developer's perspective on co-working and flexible workspace. Co-working spaces are unique. They're more open, they have a greater mix of people, and are generally thought of as being more collaborative and innovative. The COVID-19 virus has challenged some of those perspectives. And today, we want to dive a little deeper into the landlord's perspective on flexible work as a service and as an amenity, but to also consider some of the strategy and financial aspects of those types of space. So Hans, welcome. It's great to have you back. Maybe if we could just dive right in, and maybe if you could share with us a little bit about Hines' perspective, and how do you look at these spaces relative to the overall market?
That sounds great, Bob. First of all, glad to be back here. You said the right word, challenging. Presently, co-working spaces and flexible workspaces are very challenged, but they're also still appealing for a lot of the reasons you mentioned. They're challenging clearly because of the concerns that shared office space brings in the current pandemic environment, with distancing being the main mitigator to preventing spread. On the other hand, flexible workspace can be more appealing because of the flexibility that this type of space offers in what is now clearly an uncertain economic climate. So we're hearing from end users that there is a need for flexible workspace that is ongoing, even though we're challenged in this pandemic environment.
Yeah, Hans, maybe can you give us a little bit of the market and what you're looking at going forward?
Yeah, well, the flexible workspace market, without a doubt, is under duress. And many of the existing operators are in distress right now. The majority of these operators are looking for rent relief from landlords because they saw their customers cancel their memberships once the pandemic was widespread and shelter-in-place orders were put in place. So their occupancies dropped severely, and their new demand basically went to zero. And frankly, for the smaller players and those groups that don't have strong balance sheets, they just may not make it because we're clearly still in a mode where we're managing the return to workplace. The fact that some smaller players are not going to make it is clearly going to lead to some just going out of business. It's also going to lead to some industry consolidation. There may be some, larger groups that pick up some of the boutique firms that have great locations and a good product. So clearly, the flexible workspace market is in turbulence right now. But with these types of things, we're going to come out stronger on the other end.
How are these spaces different from your typical tenants?
Let's just start with what a typical tenant space is like, and we don't even have to talk about the space itself because it varies from user to user. But let's say the average lease term is 10 years. For our buildings, maybe it's 10 years. And let's say the average tenant is halfway through their lease term. So what that really means is that their improvements were probably designed 5 or 6 years ago. Bob, you know this because of the area you're focused in your business on the design side, interiors in particular. I mean, workplace standards are evolving rapidly because of mobility and technology. And now COVID-19 has accelerated that evolution even more. So if you're in space that is 5, 6, 7 years old, it's going to feel dated. And that's the big difference. This generation of flexible workspace, I think, has realized that the space really needs to be addressing the needs of the modern workforce. And I think it's going to take an even a newer level in the area of health and wellness because of the fact that the space is shared and perhaps on the margin more dense. There's even a greater focus on health and wellness and safety, and it's being led by these flexible operators in many cases.
But from a landlord's perspective, are these spaces more for tenant use? Are they a service, to the tenants, or are they more of an amenity space?
That depends, Bob. It depends if you've leased the space out to an operator. If you've leased the space out to an operator, you're simply looking at them, at least financially, as a tenant. And that operator doesn't really have an obligation to do anything for your building other than pay the rent for the space that they've leased. In contrast, our flexible workplace program, which we call the Square, our tenants are the priority customer. Our tenant customers are who we want to go to first to say, hey, what are your flexible space needs? Let's meet them right here in the building or in the neighboring building that we happen to own also. So it's a little bit of a function of kind of the business arrangement you have with the or your flexible workspace. We've surveyed our tenants, and the need for flexible workspace is clearly increasing as we move forward into the future. And as a vertically integrated operator at Hines, we take great pride in taking care of our tenant customers and being a solution provider, a real estate solution provider for them. From our perspective, the Square does serve as an amenity for the building tenants that need flexible workspace, but we've also incorporated a program where all building occupants can take advantage of the Square. There are some common areas, most notably the lounge space, that's going to be open to all building occupants, so that the Square does function as an amenity for everyone in the building.
Hans, how do these spaces help to provide value for the ones that you're operating?
Well, first of all, we think if we're doing something that meets the needs of our tenant occupants, that is going to ultimately lead to value preservation and enhancement for our buildings. In particular, we are focused on tenant retention, renewals, and loyalty, because tenant churn and having new tenants come in and old tenants leave, those are capital intensive activities. And if you can retain them, if you can, increase on the margin your tenant renewal rate, that capital you save really adds up. And that's going to reflect in the building value. So we clearly do think there's a value proposition. We really talk about it as a way to future-proof our buildings. We've discussed how the workplace is evolving quickly. And so we think flexible workspace has an important role in keeping up, meeting the needs of the modern workforce into the future.
You talked about some of the challenges with this space. Are there other challenges, with this type of space, and how do you see that changing?
Well, I do want to emphasize that we think one of the biggest challenges is the financial structure of a long-term lease supported by short-term rents. In the scenario where an operator is leasing space from a building owner, we're seeing right now that there is a mismatch, and it's a recipe for failure as co-working tenants are trying to renegotiate their long-term leases. As far as the actual space is concerned, we know it's capital intensive as the improvements are expensive, but high quality design and well-appointed furnishings and interiors now have become the expectation.
Given all the challenges, what's your strategy moving forward from here?
Going back to my comment about the financial structure, our strategy is to use the management agreement structure rather than lease. With a management agreement, building ownership controls the operation through a manager like Hines, but directly receives the benefits, which includes a rent premium, leads for perhaps long-term direct leases in their building, and then the fact that the space can be amenitized serve as an amenity for the whole building.
How do you see the physical space itself evolving, as things move forward?
We talked about health and wellness. Co-working operators and flexible workplace operators are going to lead the charge there. because of the fact that the workspace is shared, because of the fact that the model is set up to where you have an on-site manager who can address these things and provide that level of office hospitality that's now going to expand into office health and wellness. And I think that's a good thing. It can be a model for other occupants. The other thing you're going to see just structurally and operationally is you're going to see more building owners, especially those that are vertically integrated like us and Hines, get more directly involved. You know, outsourcing this to a third party can be, there's some risks there, right? And ultimately, as a building owner who has the direct relationship with tenants, you know, we should really be valuing that direct relationship. And I think that's why you can see Hines and others get more directly involved.
You know, I'm just thinking, the opposite could hold true though. If you've got a good operator, wouldn't they bring a higher level of expertise to that service, you know, and serve your tenants?
Yes, I would agree with that, and that's the current status. And these operators are also exploring the management agreement structure, but you're still outsourcing that relationship to some degree, and it is, you know, akin to the hotel model where you have the hotel flags that are really represent the owner. So I think with the right partner, you can feel comfortable that that operator is representing you well as an owner, particularly if you're not vertically integrated and don't have management services. The reality is, you know, at Hines, we have a huge global footprint. We're in, you know, over 200 cities, over 20 countries. We may not be able to find the right operator in all locations, but we are working with third-party operators, and we do think there's some good ones out there. Frankly, though, this current economic distress in the marketplace, it's really putting into question the longevity of some of these operators.
Do you see this flexible workspace growing in your buildings, you know, or is it something that you think the use of the space will change over time?
We definitely see it growing, both in anecdotal conversations and in actual surveys. Our tenants are telling us that the proportion of their real estate footprint, their corporate real estate footprint, is shifting towards flexible. You know, and that's a reflection of just sort of the economy, and particularly in the knowledge sector where things are changing so rapidly. Our tenant customers need this kind of flexibility, and we're very committed to providing it to them directly.
So do you see that the enterprise level of that growing more, you know, over time?
I do. We're not, we at Hines in particular are not necessarily focused on aggregating small demand from contract workers and freelancers and entrepreneurs. Our spaces are definitely open to them, and we think they add something to the environment, but our focus is on the enterprise side. I would just add that, you know, for the Square, we're really embracing workplace evolution, recognizing how fast things are changing. And so we actually use it as a bit of a technology R&D sandbox as well. For example, we're testing different movable wall systems to take, you know, flexibility to the next level. We've implemented sensor technology to collect data and track occupancy and space utilization, as well as indoor air quality and thermal comfort. So now getting into the realm of health and wellness. And I'm really excited to tell you that our most recent space in Salt Lake City is pursuing WELL certification. So
Hans, another great conversation. It's been a lot of fun, lots of great insights. So thank you very much.
I really enjoy it, Bob. Thank you.